Get this, some of your favorite games are probably using AI right now. And no, I'm not just talking about fancy graphics or anything. We're talking about games that can basically build themselves.
It's really changing the game development scene, yeah.
It's wild. So we're diving deep into this research paper about AI's role in gaming. And one of the things that really caught my eye was this whole games building themselves thing. They call it procedural generation, right?
Right.
And it's like giving AI a set of rules and then just letting it go wild, creating levels, quests, you name it.
It's incredible, isn't it? I mean, this technology allows for almost infinite variations. Like, your experience in a game could be completely different from mine, even if we're playing the same game.
Yeah, it's like having a virtual world building assistant.
Exactly, yeah.
And it gets even more interesting. The paper mentions how Assassin's Creed is already using AI to write dialogue, like actual dialogue, for some of the NPCs.
Oh, wow.
Those random characters you bump into, you know? They're making them sound way more human, less robotic.
That may seem like a small detail, but it goes a long way in creating a more immersive experience for the player. I mean, instead of hearing the same lines over and over again, you encounter a world that feels more dynamic and engaging.
Sure.
It's the little things, you know?
This AI-powered sound design is blowing my mind. Imagine music in a game that adapts to what you're doing. Like sneaking around, the music gets all suspenseful, huge battle, cue the epic orchestral score.
Yeah.
It's like the game is reacting to your every move.
It really adds another layer to the experience, wouldn't you say? It's not just background music anymore. It's like an integral part of how the game feels.
Okay, but hold on to your hats because this next one is wild. We're talking AI being used to test games. And I don't just mean finding glitches, but actually predicting where a player might get bored.
Wow.
Yeah.
Think about how games used to be tested. It involved countless hours of people playing the game over and over, trying to find any issues. Now AI can take on a lot of that heavy lifting.
The paper suggests that this could mean better games and faster development times. It's like AI is becoming the ultimate quality control expert for the gaming world. It's like having a tireless QA team at your fingertips, right? But as with any cool new tech, it's not all sunshine and roses, you know what I mean? This paper also delves into some ethical concerns, which is important to think about.
Oh, absolutely. You're right. It's essential to acknowledge both the potential and the pitfalls.
Yeah.
And one of the big ones the paper highlights is this blurring line between real players and AI-generated content in games.
It's true. Like, is that really another person playing against me, or is it some super realistic AI bot?
Yeah.
That's kind of freaky if you think about it too much. And the paper specifically talks about the risk of AI voices and avatars being used to trick players.
Right.
Not cool.
No. And that's why this whole concept of proof of personhood is so fascinating. The paper dives into it, and basically it's about verifying that a user is actually human.
So it's like a digital ID card, but instead of proving you're old enough to buy a drink, you're proving you're not some AI mastermind trying to take over the gaming world.
Exactly. Yeah. Imagine a gaming environment where you can be confident that the people you're interacting with are actually people.
Right.
That's the idea behind it.
I like it. But how do you actually prove you're human in the digital world? I mean, the paper mentions something called zero-knowledge proofs, which sounds incredibly complex.
It is a complex concept, but think about it like this. Imagine being able to prove you're over 21 without showing your ID or revealing your birth date. That's kind of what zero-knowledge proofs allow you to do online.
Okay.
You can prove you're human without giving away sensitive personal information.
That makes sense. So less risk of identity theft and a more secure gaming experience overall.
Precisely.
Sign me up.
Yeah. It's about protecting individual users while also maintaining the integrity of the online gaming community. Think about how important that is in multiplayer games, for example.
Yeah. Absolutely. If everyone can prove they're human, it levels the playing field and makes the game more fair for everyone involved. And speaking of fairness, the paper also mentioned how proof of personhood could help limit those annoying armies of bots some people create.
Yeah. It all ties back to the idea of fostering genuine human interaction online, right?
Yeah.
If you can minimize the influence of bots and fake accounts, you create a more authentic and enjoyable experience for everyone.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like we've got AI creating these incredibly immersive and dynamic gaming worlds, but then we also need ways to make sure those worlds are populated by actual human players.
Right.
Talk about a double-edged sword.
It's a fascinating paradox, isn't it? As AI technology advances, we need to find ways to balance its incredible potential with the very real need for human connection and authenticity.
Well said. Now, speaking of finding a balance, the paper throws out another interesting idea for tackling this whole personhood verification thing: social media.
Ah, yes. Using your existing social network as a form of validation.
Okay.
It's a concept that's gaining traction, and the paper makes some interesting points about its potential application in gaming.
Okay, so how would this work? Would we have to link our super secret gaming profiles to our Facebook accounts? Because I'm not sure I'm ready to share my awesome high score with my grandma just yet.
Right. Well, it wouldn't necessarily require a direct link like that. It's more about using your existing social networks as a way to prove you're a real person. The paper suggests that games could incorporate a quick verification step during registration or login, leveraging existing platforms like Twitter, Facebook, or even LinkedIn.
So instead of creating a whole new system, you're basically piggybacking off the verification processes that are already in place on these platforms.
Exactly.
That's pretty clever.
Yeah, I mean, these companies have invested a lot of time and resources into combating bots and fake accounts, so why not tap into that existing infrastructure? Plus, it offers a more user-friendly way to add a layer of trust to online gaming without requiring a ton of extra steps.
I can see how that would be appealing to both players and game developers. It's simple, relatively unobtrusive, and leverages existing technology. But what about the privacy concerns? I mean, not everyone wants their gaming activity linked to their real-world identity, right?
That's a valid concern. And the paper acknowledges that. It emphasizes the importance of user consent and data security in any implementation of this approach.
Because, let's be honest, no one wants their grandma seeing their online gaming persona.
Exactly. It's all about finding that balance between convenience, security, and privacy.
And speaking of finding a balance, there's another important point the paper brings up. This idea of social media verification isn't foolproof. I mean, what's to stop someone from just creating a fake social media account to get around the system?
You're right, it's not a perfect solution. However, it's about adding layers of trust, not creating an impenetrable fortress. And the paper does suggest ways to make it more effective, such as incorporating in-game rewards or exclusive features for players who verify through their social media accounts.
So you're incentivizing honesty and transparency, gamification at its finest.
Exactly. It's about creating a system where players are encouraged to be their authentic selves, while also acknowledging the need for security and trust in the online gaming world. Which brings us back to this bigger picture of building trust online, something that's becoming increasingly complex.
Especially as AI gets better at mimicking human behavior, right? And speaking of AI and human behavior, the paper goes really deep on those personhood credentials we talked about earlier. It's like a whole other rabbit hole just waiting to be explored.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's dive into these personhood credentials, or PHCs. I know it sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie, but the way the paper breaks it down, it's actually pretty straightforward.
Yeah, it's a really innovative approach to this whole challenge of verifying identity online, especially when you want to do it in a way that respects user privacy.
Right, because no one wants to give up their firstborn just to prove they're not a robot, right? So how do these PHCs actually work? The paper gets into the nitty-gritty, but maybe you can explain it to me like I'm a gamer who just wants to get back to playing version.
Sure. Think of it like a multi-step process. First, you enroll with a trusted entity. Could be a government agency or a certified organization.
Okay.
Something like that. Imagine it's like getting your driver's license, but, for the digital world.
Okay, so there's some kind of verification to make sure you're a real person.
Yeah.
But nothing too Big Brother-ish, I hope.
You got it. The paper emphasizes minimal information disclosure. They even talk about offline verification methods, like confirming a physical document or something so your data isn't just floating around everywhere.
That makes me feel better already. So I've got my digital ID, my PHC. Do I have to whip it out every time I log into a game?
This is where that zero-knowledge proof magic comes in again. You're essentially proving you have the credential without revealing the actual information on it.
It's like, I can prove I'm old enough to be at this virtual poker table, but I don't have to show you my birth certificate and home address.
Exactly. You maintain your privacy, but the game platform knows you're a legitimate human user. Everyone wins. Well, except maybe the bots.
Speaking of bots trying to win, the paper mentions something called credential limitations. What's that all about?
It's a safety measure, basically, to prevent abuse. It makes sure one person can't just create a whole army of accounts, each with their own PHC. No more sock puppet armies trying to dominate the leaderboards.
So it's like one player, one PHC. Keeps things fair.
Exactly. And to make things even more secure, they suggest a system with multiple trusted entities issuing these PHCs. That way there's no single point of failure.
Right.
Makes it much tougher for bad actors to mess with the system.
Multiple layers of security, always a good thing. But let's be real for a sec. What's to stop some super advanced AI from just figuring out how to make fake PHCs?
It's a valid concern, for sure. But the paper actually addresses this directly. They talk about using some pretty hardcore cryptography, maybe even incorporating offline components to make it, incredibly difficult, nearly impossible for AI to crack.
It's like an epic cyber battle for the future of gaming. So where do we even go from here? We've got AI pushing the boundaries of what's possible in gaming, but also these big questions about who's really in control. It feels like we're standing at the edge of a whole new era for games.
It's an exciting but uncertain time for sure. And, I think it's really going to come down to finding that sweet spot between embracing all these advancements, but also protecting what makes gaming great in the first place, that human connection.
Well said. It feels like we've unlocked all these amazing new possibilities, but now it's up to us to make sure, we're playing by the right rules. This has been quite the deep dive. Until next time, remember, keep it human out there.